But if I'm going to consider doing it, when is the time to do it? What age? How old should I be? What should I be doing now when I'm younger? Should I be doing it when I'm older, etc.? The second one is what's the right amount to consider? How much should I purchase if I'm going to be purchasing it, etc.? And then finally, how do I pay for it? We did have a caller this morning that had a discussion with somebody about life insurance-based long-term care.
Versus what they would call a traditional policy.
Exactly. So let's kind of walk backwards on these. Aaron, we see a lot of folks, we're talking to them about creating a game plan, for long-term care where it's appropriate, and we're suggesting they might want to consider, assuming they can qualify, for coverage. What's the right age to do this at?
We're usually looking at around 64 years old. The reason for that is because if you begin to pay premiums anytime before that all the way through essentially age 80, you're going to pay the same amount. It's just amortized over a different amount of time. So, yes, if you started at 40, your premium is going to be less than if you start at 60, but why start paying on something at 40 that you're most likely not going to be using until your 80s? So we think around 64 is the sweet spot for that. But in addition to that, underwriting standards are continually evolving with long-term care, and what we've found over the last 2 years is that the new standard is if you're under 65 years old, they can do a phone assessment of your cognitive skills because that is one of the requirements, and they'll accept just written information from your physicians along with the questionnaire that you fill out, usually with an agent. If you are over 65 years old, they want an in-home visit. This is 1, to see your cognitive abilities. 2, they'll do the blood pressure cuff, things like that. But 3, they also want to see, 1, that you don't have a hospital bed downstairs, or that you dump all your pills into one big jar. So it's a little bit more extensive. So we feel let's not put the clients through the more extensive long-term care underwriting. Let's get in right under the wire, essentially.
The other thing most folks are not aware of is that unlike life insurance or disability insurance, long-term care premiums are not guaranteed.
And they don't stop.
Right. They aren't fixed in. And most folks that have purchased these coverages in the past, usually after they have them 3, 4, 5 years, they're seeing a premium increase, not really based on them, but based on everybody that's in their state. We've seen this across all the companies that are out there. So purchasing it and paying for it for an extenuated period of time doesn't always make a lot of sense, and frankly, the premiums are going to go up as well.
And really, we're talking about people that have to secure this privately. If you have an option through your employer, it always makes sense to take a look at that because in most cases it's subsidized. The benefits are excellent. It's almost like the difference between individual health insurance and group health insurance.
Yeah, but don't do it at 40.
That is also true, but you might want to take if they're charging you $25 a month, which we've seen. Why not?
Well,
they may never offer the benefit again.
Well, because it's possible just to remember that you're probably not going to use it till you're 80 anyways.
That's also true.
Unless you have some significant accident that occurs or maybe a mental defect that happens. So,
right.
Again, older is better as you're getting closer.
Right.
What's the right amount considered? This is really, I think, the key for most folks to consider. We think it's an algebra problem.
That's right. And basically, if you think about $9,000, that's the number that we have found we generally key in on.
A monthly benefit.
Exactly, because we know that to be in a semi-private room in an assisted living facility, it's going to run about $6,000 a month.
Right. So in other words, we need $6,000 a month for the spouse that's receiving care. But we also want to provide an additional $3,000 a month, or we want to have $3,000 a month of cash flow for that non-chronically ill spouse.
Wow, $9,000 a month is a lot. But you want to keep in mind, any income stream that you have in retirement is not going to stop simply because you're ill. Social Security is going to continue. Pensions will continue. Most people will be receiving income from their investments, not because necessarily.
And frankly, RMDs probably at that age because they're over 70 when they're receiving benefits.
That's exactly what I was going to say, which is most people are going to be forced to be receiving additional income if they need it or not by the time they're on. They might need long-term care because of required minimum distributions. None of those things are going to stop. So what we really need to figure out is what's the difference between the additional expense that we've added, all of your income streams, what's that number? When we throw an extra $6,000 on top of your expenses, we subtract out all of your income streams. What's the difference? And usually we find it's about $3,000.
I mean, it's funny. It seems like everybody falls at around $3,000 a month, which would then translate into a contract of a benefit of approximately $100 a day.
Right, and and I think there's probably a few people out there thinking, well, I'm spending $5,000 a month, and if I add 6 on top, that's 11, not 3. You have to think about the fact that exactly. You have to think about the fact, unfortunately, that if your spouse or you become institutionalized or even ill, all the fun stuff you used to do is over. So all your lifestyle expenses are going to be cut out. You're not going out to dinner. You're not going on vacation. You're not going out to the movies. You're either going back and forth from a facility or you're the one providing care for your spouse.
Yes.
So that really decreases your expenses. So that $3,000 for the spouse that doesn't need care is truly like keeping the lights on in the house, food,
making the mortgage
insurance,
payment if you have one.
Which most people we get to that point don't have one. So
if we're looking at a benefit of $3,000 a month as compared to trying to fund the whole benefit of $6,000 a month, that's already half.
Right.
The other thing is that most contracts that we see when folks walk in that they already purchased long-term care are heavily ridered.
Right. One, they bought too much base benefit because they bought the full $6,000 a month. Right. Second, they bought cost of living riders, which is inflation adjustments. So their $6,000 gets a 3 to 5% increase every single year. That's a 30% increase on the expense.
Yeah, and I've heard you say many times in the past, Aaron, in many cases, Social Security is also inflation adjusted.
Right. You get your cost of living adjustment. I mean, Congress decides that on an annual basis. However, last year we saw a pretty sizable one. The year before that we saw one as well. So most years you receive them. Also, if you're prudently invested, your goal is to outpace inflation there as well. So we don't need to inflation adjust everything in the portfolio.
Right. And when we do that, we find that the costs in terms of the premiums for folks to do that really run around $2,500 a year.
Well, that's right. If you're securing benefits when you're both around age 64, the current premium's around $2,500 a year.
And that's for both, is that
together, correct? For a $3,000 a month benefit per person.
I know there's some people that are like, falling off the side of the road and hitting into the walls and stuff because.
Oh my gosh, excitement abound.
Because what they've seen, almost to a person we've seen, we heard this was really expensive. We saw and it was really expensive. The thing it isn't, because again, what we're doing is not trying to pay for the whole stay, just bridging the income gap.
Right, and that really goes back to there's never a good deal in terms of products. There's no need to buy a product unless you have a purpose for it. So the reason that we can keep the cost low is because we know what the end game is. What's the goal of this product? If we have worked all the math out, we did the algebra problem, we know that we can buy less benefit with less bells and whistles, those extra riders, and still get you what you need at a cost that you can manage over time.
Yes, no question about it. So then the last question then is, how do you pay for it? Well, there are different ways to do it. Number one is there's the underwriting route. If you can medically qualify, purchasing an individual long-term care contract is the most effective and efficient way to do that. Would you agree?
That's right. You pay premiums with it. You pay premiums for it. So if you were working with us, we would figure out, do we need to send you a little extra cash when that premium is due, or can you pay for it through your monthly expenses? Most people can and do because they're already paying other insurance bills.
Right. The other thing then is if you're not using a insurance contract, long-term care contract, you can look at other what we call asset-based solutions, and there are really two.
Right. Tom mentioned the first one, which is a life insurance contract that has a long-term care rider associated with it. The other alternative is an annuity-based product with a long-term care rider associated with it.
Yeah. And these days, I'm kind of liking the annuity-based contract.
Right.
Simply because it's generally a fixed annuity, which means you're receiving a fixed rate of interest offered by the insurance company. And what they're essentially doing is that whatever you're putting in, they're increasing the pool of benefit that you have by 2 or 3 times. and they're taking a piece of the interest they earn every year, and that's really what's paying for the long-term care premium.
Right, and then I think the reason that we have been leaning towards these annuity-based products is, and they still have all of the restrictions that an annuity has, which is surrender periods and withdrawal corridors, so liquidity restrictions. But you're not paying for anything that you're not using, which is if you don't need a life insurance benefit or you don't need as large of a life insurance benefit as you need of a long-term care benefit, this annuity-based product, you are paying a rate of interest back to the insurance company for the rider, but you're paying for the rider that you want. You also have the opportunity to get the money back if you don't use it, unlike any insurance premium. And this kind of gives you the opportunity to do it you have to use non-qualified assets, though. That's the real catch.
Right, and so a lot of times we're seeing CDs, things like that clients are using that are coming due where they have excess cash assets. Again, an important part of the game plan, planning for the cash flow while you're well, planning for cash flow when you're sick, right? And next week we're going to talk a little bit about planning cash flow when we're not there, right?
That's right.
If you're between the ages of 55 plus, you're within 5 years of retirement, you can always give us a call for a coaching session, 314-863-0008. Again, 314-863-0008. See you next week. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial advisor, or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial.